Jason Garrett of the NBC Football Night in America crew, former Cowboys head coach, and Football Night in America Packers Steelers. That'll be on Sunday night. We'll talk to Coach about that. How do you assess the Chargers from what we saw early to where we are now, Jason?
It's disappointing, but I think a lot of it has to do with injuries, and I don't want to make it about that. But, they built their team to be really strong and stout on the offense and defensive lines. And, you think about both their tackles being out. I just think it takes away so much of their identity and how they want to play. It's a long year. There are going to be some ups and downs. And I think for them, the biggest thing is to kind of fight through this and come out the other side of it, because I think there's plenty there. I think they still have a really good defense. I love the quarterback. I love how the quarterback has stepped up more in some bigger moments and kind of put the team on his back. I said this, we had a conversation about this at the Hall of Fame game. And there was debate about how good Justin Herbert is. And, my comment is at some point you have to reach into the chest of the guys on your team and grab their hearts and bring them with you. And to me, he has everything. He's incredibly talented guy, obviously, athletically, his arm. I think he's a rare guy, too, his preparation and all of that. And I think he's taking that next step. So they just have to get through this time with their guys being out and come out the other end. I think they're still going to be there in the end of it.
We've seen this now. It's almost like if you don't make it as a high first-round pick at quarterback, you're going to get kicked to the curb. You're going to bounce around as a backup. Then all of a sudden you reemerge. So Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold both didn't make it in New York. And here they are thriving with different places. And I'm curious about that separation from first couple of years to then you get into your later 20s that you somehow figure it out. Baker Mayfield, when he started, to getting kicked around, to now and later in his 20s figuring it out. What is it about that position that some guys may not get it early, but they eventually get it later?
I think there are two things. Let's start with the environment they were playing in at the outset. Typically these guys who get picked high are going to bad teams. And, I can remember for years we had there was a debate about how do you make the environment more quarterback friendly for Romo. Well, we drafted Tyron Smith, Travis Frederick, and Zach Martin. I mean, it was as simple as that. And Tony had his best year the year that we drafted Zach Martin, because we ran the heck out of the ball. We had, DeMarco Murray led the league in rushing. Tony was incredibly efficient, and that's how the whole thing goes. So, when you're in those hard environments and you're learning how to play, it's a bad combination. So I think as quickly as you can, get the environment right for those guys. And typically it starts up front for me. Control the line of scrimmage. Don't have them running for their lives, and make good picks. You got to pick the right guys when you do that. And then, those guys learn as they go. They're in a good place. They don't have to do everything. Burden is a big thing in football. If you can spread the burden around, one part of your team or one guy in your team doesn't have to win for you every week. That's what the best teams have. So typically those guys, when they're young, they're carrying too much burden. The environment's not very good. And then people sour on them, particularly in places like New York where there's high scrutiny. So I think the biggest thing for them was to get a reset and then go to a better place. Tampa's a better team than Cleveland was or Carolina was. Indianapolis is a better team than the Giants were for Daniel. So those guys get a chance to settle in. They have their scars. They've learned, but they're also in a better place.
I'm also, you being a former coach and a quarterback, we talk about reps for backups, that Shedeur Sanders not getting first-team reps and Dylan Gabriel's a hit away from Shedeur coming in. Did people ask you about Troy Aikman's backup? Does he get reps with the first team with the Cowboys?
He doesn't.
Okay.
He doesn't. And I lived that. I was the third quarterback there for a while, but I was also the backup there too. And you just don't get reps. The starters get the reps. You get the scout team stuff. Maybe you get a little something. Different coaches will give you 10 plays on Friday, or they'll give you 2 plays at the end of a 20-play set or whatever. But, I learned early on, I would complain to myself, like how am I supposed to play well? I never get any reps. And then you realize that, if you can't function in this environment, they're going to find someone who can. So you better develop a relief pitcher mentality, and you better figure out how to do it. And so the way I did it was you spend so much time watching film, so much time knowing the plan inside and out. I would drive around. When I'd be driving home, I'd turn the radio off and I'd call plays out loud, right? I mean, literally, you do everything you can to create reps for yourself, to get yourself ready to go. And I'd throw after practice, and you're always doing stuff because you're standing on the sideline, and I would used to call the plays in, and the quarterback gets hurt, and you put the headset down, and it's like, okay, you go from 0 to 100 miles an hour. But the question is, do those 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 reps during the week? Is that what allows you to play well? Is it better to have the guy who's playing all those snaps anyway take those, and then you just have to have a relief pitcher's mentality to go in and function? And so it's a tricky thing, but Troy Aikman, who's a first ballot Hall of Famer, he got all the reps. And so I think if you're Dylan Gabriel, he probably deserves all the reps too, because he's got a lot of catching up to do.
All right, give me a for instance. You're driving home, you turn off the radio, and then what are you yelling out?
Yeah, I mean, literally, you're saying out loud, okay, this is bunch right motor, scout right 525 up post, right? I mean, that's what you're saying. And
Can you imagine being in the car next to you and they're watching you
I
shouting it
can't tell you the
out,
number.
hand signals, the whole thing?
Yeah, I can't tell you the number of times it happened. Like, what is this guy doing? But you have to steal reps any way you can. And one thing, a little bit of a different topic. When I became the head coach in Dallas, there was this virtual reality thing that became available to us, and we had it for a while. And the reason we had it was probably because of my experience as a backup quarterback, never getting reps. And we created a virtual reality room where backup quarterbacks could go in there and go through. Yeah, essentially, they were hearing the play from the coach, going to the line of scrimmage. You could look left, you could look right. There's Des Bryant over here. Here's Jason Witten. I mean, it was a real thing. And for me, I thought it was invaluable. Not for the starter. The starter's getting all those reps, but the guy who doesn't get the work. And I know Jaden Daniels has done a lot of work with this, but I think that's a real thing, and that's something that can really help people going forward.
Wait a minute. So I go into a room, do I have to put on glasses?
You do.
And I'm now the defense isn't going to hit me, but how are they moving so I know where I'm going to, like my hot receiver, going through progressions? How much time do I have to do this?
Well, we had all these crazy cameras at practice, and these 360-degree cameras that they made up, and you would have it like 15 yards behind the ball, and everybody, you had to stay away from the camera. But literally, you would hear the offensive coordinator call the play, go in the huddle, walk up to the line, and you could do this and this with these headsets on, and literally there's Des Bryant. It's not an image of Des Bryant, that's him right there. And you see the safety creeping down, and you see the strong dog pressure coming over here. And to me, I would go in there afterwards. I'm like, this is incredible. I mean, I love the idea of it because, like I said, I was the guy that was on the highway calling out the plays, right? So I think it's the wave of the future myself.
Jason Garrett, NBC Football Night, America's studio analyst. Sunday night, it'll be the Packers at the Steelers. Which team do you have a better handle on with these two?
Ooh, that's a great question. That's why you get paid the money, Dan Patrick. Because I think there's questions about the handle of each of them. I think Pittsburgh, I think you have to feel good about what they've done with Aaron Rodgers playing there. He's played at a high level for them. They've done a good job offensively. The defense, where they made a huge investment, that's a concern. I mean, Joe Flacco had been a Cincinnati Bengal for about a week. He went down there and he looked like, Kenny Anderson and Boomer Esiason wrapped in one. I mean, he was fantastic. So some question marks about Pittsburgh, their ability to defend the pass really comes up. So I have concerns there. Green Bay, they've just been a little up and down. They've had some ugly wins. I really like their team. I like their defense. I think Hafley's done an excellent job. Micah Parsons has been so impactful, opening things up for other guys. But then in the big moments the other day, he had 3 sacks. So I think you're starting to see that thing mesh a little bit. I love Jordan Love. I think he's still getting to a point where he needs to be a consistent player week in and week out for them. And I think a big part of that is them, making Josh Jacobs a part of it. So again, he doesn't have too much burden. So they've both been kind of fits and starts. Green Bay went a little bit ugly. Pittsburgh, some question marks on their defense. In the end, I like Green Bay's team more.
The Chiefs look like a completely different team now. You give Mahomes a couple of weapons in there, Rashee Rice, you get Worthy back. They look like the best team in the AFC.
Well, we talk about this every week on Football Night in America, and when the Chiefs are struggling early on, everyone starts to get down on them. That's the kind of world we live in, and my response always is, have you guys been watching for the last decade? Has anybody been watching this? I mean, this team is historic. The coach is incredible. The quarterback's incredible. The defense, they have these Hall of Fame players. So to me, it was just a matter of, they had some question marks on the offensive line. They're still working through that. It's better the last couple of weeks. But, getting their guys back, I think that's a big thing. And Rashee Rice, a couple of years ago, I'll never forget this. I did the playoff game between Miami and Kansas City, the freezing cold game up there in Kansas City. And if you remember, Kansas City got shellacked. I think it was Christmas Day against the Raiders. They were terrible.
Yeah.
And it almost looked to me the following week that they said, okay, here's who we can trust. I can trust Mahomes. I can trust Kelsey. I can trust Pacheco. And we can trust Rashee Rice. Those are the only guys getting it. And that's what they did. That's what they did in the playoffs, and they went all the way to the Super Bowl, kind of taking that approach. So it was like they sat down together and said, this is the approach we need to take. This is how we're going to win. And I feel like they've done that again. And when they get these pieces back, when Rashee Rice comes back, all of a sudden Hollywood Brown is a secondary player. Travis Kelce is a secondary player. Gray is a secondary or a third player for them. And so you get them back into their slots, and now they're really hard to stop because Rashee Rice can handle the burden. And they did a great job getting him acclimated last week.
Your Cowboys, or your former team, that offense looks really good, and Dak looks – I've always said when Dak plays and he's healthy, he plays well. It's just keeping him healthy. But what do you make of – did we underestimate the Cowboys this year after the Micah Parsons situation?
Well, I think if you look at the team, they're set up to have success on offense. And like I said about the Chiefs, the way I feel about Dak, just having been with him for a while, if anybody's been watching football objectively without an agenda for the last 10 years, you say, this guy's a really good football player. He's played well from his rookie year on, and injuries have been a factor for him. Playoff success has been a factor. To me, he played really well in the playoffs early on. They haven't played quite as well in recent years, but this guy's a fantastic player. So what they've done is 3 first-round picks on the offensive line. They have a very good tight end. You pay CeeDee Lamb. He's one of the best playmakers in the league. You have Pickens, who to me, Dak was going to do a great job getting him acclimated. Javonte was someone who I loved coming out. It was just a question of, is he back from the injury? So there's a lot of weapons on that side of it. So it doesn't surprise me that they've played well as long as, for the most part, the quarterback stays healthy. The question was on defense. And even before the Micah Parsons trade, I felt like they were under-resourced on defense. Who are the marquee guys? And are they really marquee guys? And I felt like Micah Parsons made a lot of people on that defense way better. He made the other rushers better. He made the cover guys better. So you take him out of the mix to a defense that I felt needed help anyway, and you're probably seeing what you thought you'd see. They're struggling to stop people. It was better last week against Washington, but Washington's top 3 receivers were out. So we'll find out more as they go, but there's no doubt they're a juggernaut on offense, and the questions on defense are real.
Great to talk to you. Have fun on Sunday night. Thank you again, Jace.
Yeah, you're the best.
Jason Garrett, NBC Football Night in America, and that'll be Sunday night. It'll be the Packers at the Steelers, kickoff 8:20 Eastern.